Video game soundtracks have the ability to do a cool thing you can't do in too many other mediums, where a piece can play out differently depending on the actions of the audience, that is, the players. Nintendo, for example, loves changing the speed of music depending on the player character's health. So I'm here to talk about 5 such musical flourishes that I adore in games. I'll be showing footage of and touching on some of the narrative elements of a few games, a full list of which is in the description if you need to dodge spoilers. Let us begin! Mother 3's battle system includes a rhythm game mechanic that allows you to deal extra damage to foes if you attack in time with the music, and crucially, don't suck at rhythm games. Which I do, so rip. This feature is explained canonically in-game as your characters reading the heartbeat of their opponents to figure out the best way to hit them to disrupt their biorhythm or something like this. Now, Mother 3 is a game that reads really well through an eco-critical lens. The brunt of the plot deals with a megalomaniacal Porky trying to ruin the Nowhere Islands with his dirty industrialism and capitalism. That's correct, this is a Game Boy Advance game in which you mow down capitalist pigs. Anyway, point is, some really gnarly stuff happens to the animals and wildlife in this game. You start out fighting off bats and sentient yams, but by the time Porky's upgraded them into these horrid chimeras, you're fighting Terminator cockroaches, swine on wheels, and this bird head on a stick. Look at this fucking bird head on a stick! My nightmares don't need any more fuel. There's a strong theme in the game's world of the natural slowly being replaced with the unnatural, the lively being usurped by the placid, and the genuine and earnest being uprooted in favor of the fake and mass-producible. And before anyone gets too terrified at how real that is, let's move on to the musical flourish that stands upon all this groundwork I've laid out. In a ludonarrative mirroring of the way enemies are becoming less natural and more tampered with, to the point of being abominations like the Pelican Pole, the music also progresses to be less normal, which manifests itself in up-tempo versions of pieces you've already heard, as well as ones that just randomly cut out and play weird notes. Not only is it emotionally unsettling to have the familiar changed on you like this, but as you've likely already clocked, this poses a practical dilemma too, as the beat of the song suddenly changing makes it dramatically easier to drop your combo. It's a really clever way of demonstrating the horror that our heroes would feel in watching their world become one great big mechanized disaster, and I always find myself pausing before doing the attack to try and make sense of the more eclectic beats. Not good, as this game includes the rolling health counter system, whereby you have to navigate the menus quickly to save yourself from death whenever you take damage that will kill you. So even though your brain wants to stop and try and process or at least make sense of this brave new world, you just have to roll with the new times, roll with the new punches, and roll with the new heartbeats. Riders Zero Gravity is definitely one of those games that I could not explain how and why I've played it. I guess I did sort of have a Sonic phase in my early teens, but when and for what did I acquire a Sonic the Hedgehog racing spin-off sequel to a game I've never played, and why is it one of my favorite racers out there? Anyway, the main gimmick of this game, if you will, is that you have what is essentially a magic meter that fills as you perform tricks and rail grinds and the like. This magic meter fuels drifting, and also this big gravity rush thing you can do to go super fast. The soundtrack in this game is already a set of super high-octane techno beats, but clearly somewhere along the line one of the developers thought that the special moves should require a bit of something extra from the music, and whomever that person is, I love you! The basic format of each track is that it has about 6 different sections, each using different beats and melodies, but these sections are very repetitive, looping every melodic chunk a few times over and over before moving on to the next section. That doesn't sound very interesting, I hear some of you saying. Oh, but it is! Well, to me. Sort of. Alright, I'm sorry I haven't qualified it. Anyway, whenever you use one of your powers, the music drops all at once with one huge bassy note, pausing the rest of the track until you release your ability, at which point it swaps to another section of the music. So that no matter when you use your power, it feels like the right time, because the shift in music matches the potential drama both of you using it at a brilliantly smart time, and a moronically bad time. Not to mention, each track in the game has its own version of the bassy that happens when you use your power. It's also super useful as a design choice, because when you write the music this way, there is no proper end of the track, so you never let the musical tension down by hitting the end of the piece and looping. And the music stopping and starting in line with your special moves just lends this air of action and heroicism to the whole fair, and just, yeah! It's common in video games for game overs to be accompanied with a musical sting of some kind.
Come here!
But this generally remains constant no matter where you are in the game.
Calm down. No.
Some games, like Red Dead Redemption 1 and Uncharted 4/Lost Legacy, have multiple little death stings, and it just picks a random one each time you die.
Christ! Fraser! Oh no! Chloe!
But 2003's The Hobbit does something I actually can't recall seeing in a game before, which is that it changes the game over theme to fit the battle theme of the area you're in. Sidebar, this game has an excellent soundtrack. I mean, listen to this Shire theme and tell me you don't want to prance about the sunflowers cramming berry crumbled tea cakes in your face like a happy little hobbit. Returning to the point at hand, every few story missions the battle music changes to fit the environment. In the Lone Lands, for instance, there's still that strong Celtic vibe to the battle music, because we're not too far from the Shire. And the death theme is surprising and sudden, because this is early on in the game. Oh! In Mirkwood, the battle music is horrible and scary because Mirkwood is horrible and scary. So the death theme is... you know, freaky as shit. Compare all this to way late in the game when you're battling through Lake Town and Erebor. The stakes have been raised dramatically and alliances are being tested, so the music is appropriately a lot more triumphant and adventurous in battle. Until you die, when you get an uber-catastrophic sounding rendition of the main theme. Here's the main theme for reference. Now the late game death theme. Or even for incidental stealth segments like the bit with the trolls that go, "That was no badger."
That was no badger. Must have been one of them badgers.
You get variant game over themes to go with the little "you done goofed" cutscenes.
That was no badger. Stop moving. You're going on a spit.
You're going on the spit. I love this guy. My favorite stealth failed scene is the one where you have to follow this thief in Lake Town, and I guess they ran out of budget to animate a cutscene for this, because if he sees you, he just cries, "I've been spotted!" so hard that Bilbo's skull implodes, killing him instantly while the game fades out faster than Bilbo's soul leaving through his still warm corpse.
What is that? I've been spotted.
Yeah, this game is, well, it's not the most functional. Anyway, the music in this game is part of what seals it as my favorite adaptation of the book, and this little Flourish is super memorable, if only because my childhood self was scarred watching Bilbo drown 1,000 million billion times. The Metal Gear series is all about two things: not getting seen,
You take a hostile down, hide the body where a patrol is unlikely to come around.
Get real.
You can drag an enemy personnel's body.
Get real.
and contriving various reasons for the hero characters to be naked. Let's focus on the first one for this entry. My poor monetization. The stealth flow works a little differently from game to game, but the broad strokes are usually something like this. If an enemy sees you and is pursuing you, you're in alert phase. If you just got out of sight but they know you're around, you're in evasion phase. If they have reason to suspect you might be there but don't know it for a fact, you're in caution phase. And the games tend to do interesting things with the music depending on what phase you're in and sometimes how you entered it. Take the original Metal Gear, at least the version that comes with the HD collection. To my knowledge, there's no evasion or caution, but if you get seen, there's a specific alert theme. That's sort of the basis for the rest of the series' musical innovations on the subject. Looking at Metal Gear Solid, we have an alert theme when you get seen, but when you get out of sight and go down to evasion... Where'd he go? The music drops out some of the instruments, favoring the percussion and synthy bass. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 5 do another interesting thing. When you get seen by an enemy, there's a sort of pre-alert phase where you've been detected, but not all personnel have been notified just yet. In MGS2, this gives you a chance to knock out the enemy who spotted you and prevent the alert altogether before they radio it in.
Enemy sighted.
In MGS5, you can't really stop the rest of the base from being alerted, but it gives you a moment to run if you think the odds are against you. In any case, MGS 2 and 5 have a tensely composed pre-alert theme that gets you filled with adrenaline and practically forces your limbic system to make a move quick. Naturally, when the alert gets raised though, you go into the intense alert theme until, like MGS 1, you get out of sight for long enough that you go back down to evasion. Like in MGS 1, in MGS 2 and 3, the evasion theme is basically a pared back version of the alert theme. The cool thing about this is that as you run in and out of stealth, the music stays in the same place. Giving the whole experience a cohesive feel that reacts to your gameplay. In MGS 2 and 3, exiting evasion, or otherwise drawing a guard's attention when you're all clear, puts you into caution mode, which has its own musical theme.
Return to your positions. Increase security. Understood. Sending reinforcements to the first floor, strut A. Boost up security.
In the case of Metal Gear Solid 3, this theme is a bop.
My imagination.
MGS 5 does so many amazing things with the soundtrack and action sequences that it would be impractical, or at least irresponsible, to mention all of them in this video, but I'd like to highlight a few more anyway. This game does alert evasion caution in a weird way, but a lot of the same principles apply. To give you a sense of just how much the music in this game does, if I understand it correctly, there are kind of 4 caution modes. One for if they don't have any reason to believe you're there at all. One for if they didn't know you were there a moment ago but you just made a suspicious noise. One for if they have reason to believe you're there but aren't currently investigating noise or anything. And one for if they believe you're there and you just drew their attention somehow. And each of those modes has like 6 or 7 variant musical themes that can play to highlight the situation. Not to be confused with the evasion mode, which kinda sorta exists in this game as the search mode, because that's for if you were just in alert and it has its own music. And let's not forget that alert in this game means something different for the music than in the previous Metal Gear Solid games, and well, anyway, take a look at this. These chaps know I'm here, so the caution music is tense. But have a listen for what happens when I draw their attention with a distraction. Bass all picks up and the music becomes even more nerve-shredding. I love this feature. It's always a tense moment in a Metal Gear game when you think you're stealthing along perfectly and suddenly you hear, "What the?" So for that, "Oh God in heaven, why me?" moment to be captured musically is just brilliant. One last thing MGS 5 does that I love is this little low health musical indicator. When you're not in an encounter and you're low on health, the sound sort of gets muffled and you hear this ear-ringing noise.
Okay.
But when you're in combat, you get all that, plus this like panicky, heartbeat-like percussion in place of the normal battle music. I love that no matter how intense the fight, the music always cuts out in favor of that beat. The response it evokes in me is Pavlovian. But if Pavlov, like, killed the dogs or something.
Guess your hard work has paid off.
Probably, yeah.
Jack, you're great.
Cute.
For my cherished uninitiated, De Blob is a game about leading a color revolution against the anti-color ink regime who are running a police state by painting every building, street sign, pipe, and blimp within your blobby reach, and occasionally brutally murdering the local law enforcement. It's a sweet little puzzle, platformery, collectathon-y thing with some bump and funk and reggae tunes. This game actually has a load of neat little flourishes with the music. You get to select which musical theme plays in each level, unlocking more as you go. The music in each stage starts out slow, but builds, and builds, as you progress through the stage, and when you get inked, the music gets extra percussion and is all muffled while you panically retreat to the nearest body of water. But the flourish I want to focus on is the one where every time you paint a structure, done by running into it whilst equipped with a color different than your target, a few extra notes get thrown into the music. Since painting buildings is sort of the main objective you fulfill in order to progress through the stages, this adds a little dopamine kick to every successful paint job you do. It's a little bit like in Wind Waker, how every time you land a blow, an orchestral stab happens in the music. But for my money, the coolest part is this. There are 7 playable colors in the game. Red, blue, yellow, orange, green, purple, and brown, which you get from mixing all 3 primary colors. You swap colors on the fly, often inadvertently by reclaiming paint stolen by these little drones. The kicker is that each color adds its own instrument to the music when you paint with it. My favorites are probably brown, which gives this sick little vinyl scratch sound effect. And red, which jams out on the sax. So the ultimate effect of this neat little system is that when you really get cooking and paint a whole street of buildings successively, you'll be treated to a transcendent sax solo. It's a little detail, but it just adds this extra layer of righteousness to every little triumph and makes you feel like a friggin' champ. Not to mention, it's a nice way to give each color its own little unique flair besides just the visual difference, which kinda helps fall into the themes of the game. The world's better off when we don't try to limit people to just A or B. And so is the dope-ass music in this game. That was 5 musical flourishes I love in games. As ever, thank you Bundles for watching, and if you had any such musical flourishes come to mind that I didn't cover here, please feel free to let us all know down you know where. Cheerio! Guess that would be pretty tragic.